and welcome to Let's Talk About Books, baby, where we talk with your favorite LGBTQ authors. I'm Anita Kelly, and my guest today is Ray Spangler. Hey, Ray.
Hey, Nina, it's good to be here.
Oh, it's good to talk to you. As I said, it's great to hear your voice. It's been too long. So, and I always love talking to you. So,
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun times.
yes, we have running from the campus police and
My
all the.
wife recently said, I don't know how I feel about you doing that. You might end up in handcuffs again. And I said, one time.
Yeah, that was a great time though. We had a great weekend, really.
We did.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of miss those days,
It was
but
good times.
yeah, it was. So Ray, your most recent novel was, I think it was just recently released, was called Seeking Approval, right?
Yeah.
So can you tell us about this novel? Like when did it come out?
Well, that actually got a little bit complicated. Normally, that's a really easy question. The ebooks came out the last week in June, and the print books came out like yesterday. Um,
Seriously.
Yeah, it ended up, we knew that the print books wouldn't be ready in time for the GCLS conference, but it was really important for me that since I was going to be reading from that book, that I wanted people to be able to order it. So we uploaded the ebooks thinking the print books would be out in about 3 to 4 weeks. And I won't go into all of the details, but the printing chain is a mess. It kind of has been ever since the pandemic, and I got caught in between a corporate buyout of one of the biggest print distributors. So I didn't get in time for the old system, and I got in too early for the new system, and it just became a mess. But it is out there now, so if you're one of those purists who has been waiting for the print books, first of all, God bless you. I appreciate it. Second of all, you can get that right now.
Awesome. Wonderful. That's great. Great to hear. And where can they go to get that?
I know for sure that Amazon has it in all formats, and I believe that Bella Books now has their copies as well.
Okay, great. Bella Books,
Yeah.
Amazon. All right. All right. So tell us about that book. What is Seeking Approval all about?
So this is it's my therapy book. I think I've had more than one therapy book, but this one was definitely my heart book. We've got Emery, who has gone home. She's kind of a world traveler living her best life, but she goes home after her father's untimely death thinking that she will become the CEO of the company, and finds out that she has not been awarded that position because they find her too unstable. She's flighty, she's not trustworthy to show up in a pinch. They don't think that she's community minded or family minded like her father was. So she has to prove herself, and she decides that the best way to do this would be to find a nice, stable society girlfriend. And her attention falls on Arden. She likes Arden from the first time she sees her picture, but when she meets her, she finds out that Arden struggles with some pretty severe social anxiety.
Okay.
And um, everyone thinks that that's a terrible match for someone who's so gregarious and outgoing. But Emery doesn't. Emery likes Arden. She thinks she's interesting. She thinks she's different. She thinks that she has this beautiful self-deprecating sense of humor. And the two of them kind of forge an unlikely uh, connection. And
Mm-hmm.
from there, the complications sort of spin around what they both want and don't want out of life, and also society's perception of who is worthy of, being valued in our society, and who we sort of write off. And I think that was really important for me to figure out, um, how you write characters, romantic characters of worth and brilliance and sexiness, even when we have this societal stigma on things like mental illness
Mm-hmm.
anxiety and stress. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even introversion, right? It doesn't even
Mm-hmm.
have to reach to the point of a disorder, because I think a lot of people stigmatize extreme introversion.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really important for me to write these characters as beautiful and sexy and powerful in their own right, without anybody uh, fixing or curing anyone else. So that was definitely um, something I was working through there.
That's a huge undertaking. How do you take a character who has anxiety and who is an introvert and make them likable to the world, right? Um,
Yeah, I think there's definitely that perception, but I didn't have any trouble seeing Arden as likable. I think that one of the things that, I read this study once that the person who speaks the loudest in a group is seen to be the one that people follow, even if they're completely bullshitting.
yeah.
And I like, just talk loud and say it with convincing. And I think Arden has so much to give, but she says it so softly that
Mm-hmm.
you have to really be listening.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't take the time to listen, but Imri does.
Mm-hmm.
And when Imri gives Arden that chance to be heard,
Mm-hmm.
Arden gives back way more than Imri gives her in a lot of ways.
Wow. So how did you come up with these characters? Like how did you decide that, you know, one individual was going to be more gregarious and the other was going to be more introverted and um
It's always a combination of influences. I don't know that I can ever pinpoint one exact thing. Some readers have pointed out that it's kind of a gentleman Jack Uber in some ways, and I think, I was a big gentleman Jack fan for a couple years, so I think that's that's highly possible.
okay.
Um, I think I mean, I don't think, I know that I am an extrovert and my wife is an introvert. So that's definitely a combo that I live in my life.
Mhm.
But also, we had kind of a wild and at times really rough year last year. And so I was dealing with levels of anxiety I hadn't experienced before. And I think at one point I was really struggling and I kept saying, but I'm the same person. I am a good person.
Mhm.
I have not changed at my core. These circumstances of my life have changed.
Mhm.
And so I'm relating to the world differently, but I'm still at my core me. And I think that I called it a therapy book, but I think this was still very much me giving Arden the grace that I was looking for in that moment.
Uh-huh. Okay. I was wondering how you were connecting you called this the therapy book with
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because I was traveling last year, so I wasn't in therapy. But I think I was using Arden and Imri as that space to bring forth some of those things of self-reflection and self-worth and finding value and offering yourself grace, which are a lot of they're they're just a lot of things that I think we could probably all do more of.
Mhm.
Um, don't always get that affirmation.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It sounds like you did a lot of deep work on your characterization um for this novel.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
try.
Yeah. Yeah. So, are you getting what kind of reviews are you getting for, or are you getting any yet?
Yeah, I'm getting like the most, I mean, gosh, these reviews have stolen my heart.
Really?
I don't know that the book is selling particularly well, probably partially because of the print problems. But I also unfortunately think some people see the reviews talking about social anxiety and they think it's going to be something different than it is.
Mhm.
But the readers who are giving it a chance, I'm getting the most raw and vulnerable and wonderful responses to these characters that I wasn't even hoping for. I wasn't even expecting. But so many readers have written and said they haven't seen themselves reflected in our literature this way, and they haven't felt affirmed like
Mhm.
this before. And several people have sent me really personal, really, really revealing stories about themselves feeling inadequate or feeling, like they were problematic or that they had to change. And that this book was one of the first sort of, pop culture kind of references that made them feel seen. And I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, that is really awesome. And it sounds like it has become a therapy book for others as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that people, one woman wrote and said that she had only ever been told that she needed to change, that she needed to put herself out there more, that she needed to, be what other people wanted to hang out with. And not a single person in 40 years had told her that she deserved to be loved for exactly who she was.
Yeah.
And I mean, that just breaks my heart.
Yeah, that's sad. That's sad. I hope she was never in therapy and a therapist told her
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, like I said, I didn't write this as a character that needs to be pitied. I wrote this as a character who is amazing. Arden is so freaking awesome.
Yeah.
That it's not, and again, she offers Imri, I think more than Imri offers her in a lot of areas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. She may know herself better than Emery, right? Um,
Yeah, and I try not to spoil anything, but there's one point where Imri says, did you ever think that I envy your ability to sit in your own brain? Right?
wow.
I don't do that. I have to fill every single silence because I'm so uncomfortable, but you can just be with yourself, and that is something that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that is not something that a lot of people are capable of doing, really.
Oh, I think it's a superpower.
It is. It is. We fill our time with, like, just especially now, just like scrolling and TV and streaming, and yeah, it's a lot of I don't know, um, stimulus coming at us.
It is. It really is.
Yeah, yeah. So it is that is an art, I think, to just sit and be, and when I was doing like direct, my background is in therapy. I was a therapist, and when I was doing direct care, I told a lot of my clients like that you are a human being, like not a human doing, and your worth is not based on what you do and how much you do. It's just you can be, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I think we need to hear more of that, really.
I agree. I think we all as a society need to hear a lot more of that.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Well, I cannot wait to read Seeking Approval. Like, this sounds like it is right up my alley,
I
Ray.
hope so.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to ask you. You said that this past year, um, because of circumstances, you were experiencing a lot more anxiety, and I know that just from social media, from following you, that your family was on this journey last year, and you were in far off lands. Um, so how did this come to be? How did you decide to do this?
Yeah, it was wild. It was actually not what we planned at all, which led to the anxiety. But my wife had a sabbatical,
Mm-hmm.
and my son is 15, and he was going into high school, and we realize he's quickly getting to the age where, it's going to be more important for him to be stable and go through a much more linear school system than we've had in the past. So we figured this was kind of our last chance to take off.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived in England for 8 months, so we'd kind of done the abroad thing before, but this one we decided that we were initially going to try and live in Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we initially got approved for a visa, but when we got over there, we could not establish residency, which was a wild, wild experience that was, also, led to a lot of the emotions I was dealing with. But we ended up only being able to be in Spain for about 5 weeks.
Wow.
And then we hit England, went back to where we had lived in England for a while. And then we were, you know, housing insecure, basically. We had rented our home for a year. We'd signed a year lease, so we couldn't go home.
Oh my goodness.
at that point, we decided that we were going to have to take things as they came, and we were going to learn really different lessons than we set out to. We thought we were going to learn how to speak Spanish. And it ended up that we had to learn how to relinquish some control. We always like to say that we're the people who show up. And this year we had to learn to let other people show up for us.
Ah, it's a hard lesson.
Yeah, we had to embrace some vulnerability. Um, we had to figure out a lot about who we are as a family and how we move through the world. But along the way, we got, I mean, a lot of people did show up for us. So
Awesome.
we kind of meandered down the eastern seaboard. We stopped in Canada for a while, just, I mean, little bits here and there. We spent a lot of time with family we don't get to see very often. My son has never lived near grandparents or cousins,
Mm-hmm.
so that was an experience.
Nice.
He got to know his great grandparents,
Oh,
is kind of a magnificent thing. And one of our friends, I was really upset, and she said, I know it's hard and you're allowed to be disappointed, but Spain is still going to be there in 5 years, and great grandparents might not be.
that is very true.
Yeah, and it made me like I had to think about ways to let go.
Yeah.
And um he thrived. He kind of stepped up. He did really well. He learned how to manage a lot of things that 15-year-olds don't traditionally manage. He
Yeah.
can walk into places all over the world and make friends.
Yeah.
He has found that tennis is very much a universal language.
Wow.
He doesn't have to speak the language if he shows up with a tennis racket and can play.
Yeah. It's true.
And
Wow.
he learned it, like he said with great love. He said, when we're talking about what he learned, he said he learned that sometimes even parents don't have their shit together. And we kind of laughed, but we were like, you know what, buddy? That's a really good thing to learn at 15, is that most people are still figuring it out, even when they're 40.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you don't have to know all the answers, even as an adult. And I think that was a really good thing.
It's probably a relief.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it's something that he carries with him, that there's so much pressure on teenagers now. Like he was taking his first college visits as a freshman in high school, and I'm like, they're asking him what he wants to major in. And
Yeah.
I'm like, buddy, you don't like, I don't know what I'm doing half the time. How are you going to ask a 15-year-old what he wants to do for the rest of his life?
I know. It's a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their lesbian romance author was not a job listed at career day in high school, right?
No.
So many things you don't know about yourself or the world. You're
Yeah.
still figuring out. And I think that was a year where we really lived in that figuring it out mentality. And it was uncomfortable and it was hard, and it took its toll on our mental health. I don't want to, aggrandize the whole thing, but it also was a really powerful experience too.
Yeah. I bet it was. I bet it was life changing for all of you.
It really was.
Yeah.
And we got to do cool stuff too. We scuba dived in the Mediterranean. We saw a baseball game in London. We did really cool stuff along the way too.
That's so great. That's
We
awesome.
rode horses in New Mexico. Like we did some we're a family who always finds a way to have fun no matter where we are.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yep. Definitely. I'm so happy for you guys that, even though it didn't end up like you had anticipated, you had an amazing journey, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like really a journey because it wasn't just about traveling. It was a journey of getting to know yourselves and each other a little bit better, and a little more, I guess, truthfully too.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Oh, I'm so happy for you. That's great. So, Ray, I wanted to back up a little bit in time and talk about your English series.
Okay.
So that consists of full English, modern English, and plain English.
Yes.
So I think full English, right, was the first one.
Yes. A reader pointed out to me that they're in alphabetical order.
They are. Oh my goodness. So, um, when you were writing full English, did you intend to write a series or did that just kind of organically happen?
Yeah, that was not planned at all. So I've got two kind of same world series, and neither of them were planned to be a series.
Wow.
I am not a planner. But we were living in England when I started full English and um living very much in a town that setting is based off of. And it was kind of the opposite of this last trip in that we were in a place, a steady, stable place. It was pretty much the happiest year of our life. And
Oh,
there was really, you know, I was super creative there. I finished a book and then wrote two books in that 8 months.
wow.
It
That
That book is definitely a book of happy memories for me.
oh, that's so cool. That's wonderful.
Mhm.
And and so when you were living in England, was your wife on sabbatical still or like
No, she was teaching fully online
oh
then.
wow,
My
okay.
wife, yeah, my wife is a college professor and she is one of the leaders in her discipline on online education. That's the area she publishes in, and so that was her first time that she was teaching fully online. And we said, you know what? If we can do this from anywhere, we really should.
Heck yeah. That's awesome. Wonderful. That's great. So full English is the first one, and then what made you decide to write modern English and then go on to write a third plain English?
So modern English came about because there was a sort of side character in full English that the readers really, really liked. Lady Victoria Penchant, she's the daughter of the local duke, and we see her as sort of a possible love interest for Emma in the first book, and she doesn't get the girl, but she is extremely likable, and she becomes someone that the readers kind of attach themselves to. So people started asking almost immediately, would she get her own book? And I said, you know what? If 50% of the reviews mention Lady Vic, then I'll write a sequel. And it ended up being about 90% of the
Wow.
reviews.
That's
It was astronomical. So let that be a lesson to all of you readers out there that if you really love something, you should let the authors know because that's how modern English came into existence. And that book was wildly popular. I think it was more popular than the first one.
good.
So you have the daughter of the Duke falls in love with a movie actress who's filming at the castle.
Oh, cool. Oh, great. And then what about plain English? What made you go on for your third one?
So plain English came about. Anne McMahon has done the covers for the England books. She's fantastic.
Nice.
And she sent me a cover for modern English, a first draft that was just really, really beautiful, and I loved it, but it didn't fit the story at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt bad. I felt like I didn't want to offend her by turning down this gorgeous cover. But I was talking to Anna Burke one night, and I said, what if I told her I need a different cover for this book, but I want to keep the cover she sent me for the third book in the series? And Anna was like, wait, are you writing a third book? And I was like, could? You don't know. I could. And I remember it very distinctly. It was Thanksgiving during the pandemic because I was making bread and I was up to my elbows in flour and I was just kind of like tapping my phone with my elbow. and I started talking. I started dictating like what a third book could be about. And I basically wrote the meet cute from that story in that conversation to Anna.
Wow.
And it gets sprang pretty much fully formed in that moment as I'm kneading bread. And she at one point said, "Dude, stop. You need to write this down." And I was like, "I'm writing it down in the text. Don't delete." Yeah. And from there it took off. It's my first non-binary lead in Pip, and Claire is the other main character. That's Claire is another one that I think looking back was saying things to Pip that I needed to hear.
Ah,
And I didn't realize it at the time, but I wrote that book in about 10 or 11 weeks. It was
jeez.
a fever dream. It was so fast. It just poured out of me. Like I had writing sessions where I like was sweaty at the end because
Wow.
I was working so intensely, and I didn't really even have a concept of that until I went back and read all the way through. I never really plan things out as I'm writing. So my first view of the big picture is when I'm finished with the first draft, and at that point I kind of freaked out because I realized that I had revealed things through Pip that I had never really processed myself. Things about, identity and vulnerability and showing up against the grain of your community and expectations. And I ended up taking it to my therapist in a panic. And I'm like, I didn't mean to do this. This book is going to go out into the world. Like it's on the schedule. And I didn't mean to say some of these things. I didn't even know I thought some of these things. And she was like, okay, you're going to read it again and you're going to highlight passages that you find are revealing and you're going to bring them in and we're going to talk about them. We're going to go through them one by one.
Great.
Um, and that was really my beginning to process some of these things for myself and also what it means to be someone who has been known as a lesbian romance writer to now be writing non-binary and more generalized queer characters.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get to call this a lesbian romance? Do you get to call yourself a lesbian romance writer? And it ended up being really wonderful in the end,
Mm-hmm.
um, but really scary in
Yeah.
the moment.
Yeah.
Um, and that book just won the Goldie
Oh,
in the
awesome.
contemporary romance category at the GCLS Awards. And that was really affirming to me. You should have seen the look on my therapist's face when I told her that. And she was like, all this time that you thought maybe you didn't get to stay in that community, and they just gave you an award for this book.
How about that?
I think it has been a journey for all of us, right? This book from me
Yeah.
writing it to the editors working through it to the community sort of asking themselves, what do we do with this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
it's
embracing it.
yeah, and then ultimately choosing that it did belong.
Mm-hmm. Wow, you have been on quite a journey, Ray.
I have. It's been a busy couple years.
Damn. I think, now is a good time to pause and let our listeners know um, what your pen name is
Yeah,
versus.
yeah. I publish under the name Rachel Spangler, which is my legal name. I've sort of backed into a pen name because, when I started writing, that was the only name I had, and I didn't feel any need to choose a pen name. I wasn't hiding anything. And it's still a name that's not uncomfortable for me. So if you see me out when people talk about my books, they still say, "Oh, this is a Rachel Spangler romance," or "This is a Rachel Spangler book." But among friends, I'm very much going by Ray these days. Not because Rachel is a dead name, but because Rachel, it's a part of my life. It's just not the most representative part anymore. And so that's why my friends call me Ray, and I like that.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to have these sides of myself both get validated.
Hmm. Do you feel like you're through Plain English and through the Goldie Award, which congratulations, by the way,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Do you think that you are kind of given permission to be your authentic self now?
Yeah, I mean, certainly more so than I ever have. I still get the odd sort of nasty gram from folks. I know there are people that are part of our professional organizations who are against that inclusion. But I think I feel like I have the bulk of the community behind me. I feel like I certainly have been welcomed beyond what I expected a couple years ago. I think, particularly the GCLS, if you're not familiar, that's the Golden Crown Literary Society, and that's the professional organization um, for lesbian literature, fiction or non. And it was definitely going through growing pains around the same time I was about who was welcome, who was allowed in.
Hmm.
Are we policing authors' identities or are we lifting up certain types of stories and who gets in that gets to be in those categories? And there was a lot of backlash.
I'm sure.
They changed some of their language to say sapphic instead of lesbian exclusive.
I've noticed that.
So yeah, so and they put you know, a thing on their website saying sapphic includes lesbians, bisexual women, non-binary folks, trans women. Um, so it's a broader understanding of whose stories get to be part of our community, and there was considerable backlash to that. But the last two conferences, I think it's become really clear that the majority, I mean, the overwhelming majority has been supportive of inclusion, and the organization is growing. The last two conferences have really been wonderful. I mean, probably the best conferences we've had in 10 or 12 years. The
Awesome.
audience is more diverse in age, more diverse in race. We've had, a broader spectrum of queer folks there. And, I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of stereotypes about what age category people fall into, but I had conversations with 18-year-old lesbians and I had conversations with 50-year-old non-binary folks, and
Hmm.
it's just a much more representative selection now. So I'm definitely feeling safer
Good.
in that environment, and that makes me freer as a writer.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that it's just so inclusive.
Yeah.
And and I understand that there are other folks who, um, are not okay with that. But that's I always say that's their problem, and I don't want to make their problem my problem because it's not. You
Yeah,
know.
and I think one of the things is also that they're the minority. And I
Yeah.
think that's what I wasn't at all certain about a couple years ago. I honestly didn't know if plain English would end my career. That wasn't hyperbolic. There were serious conversations. Thankfully my publisher, Bywater Books, was immediately I when I wrote them and I said, Claire is a lesbian, Pip is non-binary, and this is a different thing. This is a fundamentally different set of identities, but the story is still very much a classic Rachel Spangler romance that everybody has come to know from me. And they wrote back and said, "We want it. We want it immediately. We want all of it."
Good.
Um,
Good to
but there was
hear.
some talk about, how we would handle backlash. And we did get some. Some backlash definitely came in, but it was just much, much smaller than anticipated.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Yep. There's always one in every crowd, isn't there?
Yeah.
So, so Ray, learning curve and trails merge, right? I'm going way back now. Uh,
Yeah, way back.
so they were both released in 2008,
Wow.
and yeah, so that's 15 years ago. Um, so can you look back and from then till now, and can you see the difference in your writing style and really just an evolution of your skills and style?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had no idea what I was doing at the beginning. I mean, I didn't have any sense of a career. Learning Curve was written when I was an undergraduate and I was bored and poor, and there weren't a lot of lesbian books available in Normal, Illinois. So, so I just kind of started writing that story to entertain myself in the back of my boring, you know,
Jeez.
geography classes, and it was never with any grand plan for any of this. And I wasn't even an English major. I was a political science major. And so it like the things that I have learned since then, you could fill as many books as I've written, right?
Hmm.
It's I think it was really my third book, The Long Way Home, that I was kind of aware that this was something I could build a life on. And at that point, I began to study it. I began to talk to other writers. I began to learn about craft. I began to see editing as, not fixing a manuscript, but teaching me how to do better with each book. I have a list of manuscript notes that's like 4 pages long now that I add to with every book I write. I don't make this mistake again. Don't do this thing next time. And I think that I am an extrovert. So being in situations where I talk to other writers every time I sit down
Yeah.
with other writers socially or at a conference, I try and pick up something, some bit of their wisdom that I can apply. We have the most amazing community where I can talk to the great Lee Lynch and have many, many times about understanding our place in this evolution. But I can also talk to authors who are putting out their first book 15 years after me, and what do they know? What are they bringing to the table that I haven't even imagined yet?
Hmm.
Like it's
Yeah.
gosh, part of me, like, I'm embarrassed when I go back and I don't really reread my books. I someone has someone reviewed Learning Curve not that long ago, and I was like, "Oh God, be gentle. I was just a baby. I was just a baby when I wrote that."
Yeah.
Um, and I was kind of embarrassed to see what she might find in the craft in this,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I know the heart of those characters is still true. They're still real people who helped catapult me into this life that I love. So I'm not embarrassed of them. I just think of how much I have learned since then. People are always like, if I'm going to start with one of your books, should I start at the beginning? And I'm like, oh dear God, no, don't,
Oh,
don't start there because I want you to see who I've become. But maybe read one of the new ones and then go back and you can see the contrast of how good I've gotten. Um, but I think
those
I
are
like,
all good books, though. Really.
yeah, I like to believe that the characters carry enough charm in their authenticity that you will be willing to overlook the things I didn't know about point of view.
So I want to tell you that I used to read a lot of lesbian novels, like uh, yeah, I think Naiad Press, like way back, right? Barbara
Yeah,
Wilson, all that stuff, and
that's
then
great.
and then I kind of got away from it, right? And then I was in Provincetown at what was that bookstore that closed?
Now Voyager.
That's it. Thank you.
Yep.
I was in Now Voyager, and I picked up a book, and it was Radcliffe's, and I was
Mm.
like, who is this person, Radcliffe? And
Was it one of the P-Town books?
I think it might have been, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so I bought it and read it, and so then I think right after that I bought Trails Merge.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, yeah. So that really, I think catapulted me back into the whole lesbian, like the, LGBT novel scene.
Wow, that's quite an honor. I thank you for telling me that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you for writing that.
That is still, I will say, it's one of my best-selling books. It's still in the top five.
Is it really?
Hmm.
Wow, that's great. It doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me. It's a good book. It
Thank
really
you.
is. Yeah. And it's standing the test of time.
Good.
um yeah, that's fantastic. So what are you going to do to celebrate your 15 years as a published author?
You know, honestly, I hadn't even realized it was my 15th year as a published author. So maybe I'll tell my wife that and see what we need to do. We're going to be in Provincetown in a couple weeks. Maybe we should celebrate then.
There you go. That's perfect. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry I'll miss you.
All
Uh
right. Yeah, you got to get back.
yeah, we were not going this year. Yeah, my wife doesn't she's not big on going to Provincetown in the fall.
Okay.
She'd rather go in the summertime. Um, and so I don't know. Maybe I'll just venture up myself one of these days, and
I have never been in the summer. I only ever go for Women's Week,
Ah,
but we love it. Our family's gone, outside of the pandemic. We've gone every year since Jackson was about 10 months old, 11 months old. So,
that's where I met the little whippersnapper.
yeah, he's grown up there. It wouldn't even occur to him as a 15-year-old straight white guy that Women's Week is not his target audience because he's just always been there.
Yep, that's true. Oh my goodness, yeah, yeah. No, we used to go up in the summertime all the time. That was one of our uh, first dates, kind of. Was going to
Hi.
Provincetown. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah. Well, I hope you get to celebrate in P Town your anniversary. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah, you have to post something on.
Okay.
All right, do it. So, you know, I want to get back to this, you know, therapy issue because those are my roots, and
Yeah.
so you really talk openly about being in therapy, and I have to believe that it has had an impact on how you write. And what do you think about that? Has it, helped you? And what kind of impact do you think it has had on your writing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I am a therapy convert. I have zealot-like tendencies around my therapy conversion. I put off therapy for a long, long time. I think I believed that I was skating through a lot of my life and career on my vast amounts of charm, and that a therapist
Well,
would
that's
see,
true. True story.
yeah, that a therapist would see through me and would, I didn't want to let anybody get too close
Mm-hmm.
because I think I felt like underneath it all was some sort of vast insufficiency.
It's
And
scary.
it is really scary to let yourself be known on that level.
Yep.
Um, but my wife really, really encouraged me to do that work, and it's been amazing. I've ended up loving it. For a while I was able to sort of intellectualize that, mental health is health, and that, it wouldn't have any more stigma for me than going to a dentist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I go to the dentist every 6 months, whether I feel like something's wrong or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it ended up being so much more than that. It ended up helping me understand myself. And that, I mean, what is writing a romance other than understanding fundamental conditions of human nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what makes
Yeah.
and human motivation and what makes humans do what they do.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
I always say that my wife is a tinkerer with stuff. She takes apart lamps. She does woodworking. She makes her own knitting patterns. She's always trying to figure out how things work and how to make things
She's a
better.
Renaissance woman.
Yes, she is. She's just always tinkering on something. And I think what I've learned about myself is that I am a tinkerer of people, right?
Aha.
I'm always trying to figure out what makes people tick, what makes people do any number of wild things that that are risky or that go against their self-interest or that prevent them from moving forward in ways that could obviously be good for them. And I think I've learned through therapy that I do that too. And I've learned to understand that motivation in myself. But also I have a relationship with my therapist where she understands that my mental health and my creativity are inextricably linked.
Mm-hmm.
There is no mental health for me without creation. And that is fundamental to who I am and how I address the world around me. So I can very much bring in these things to her. I can very much say, hey, this is not working, and I can't figure out why this is not working in a book. And she understands that that is something that is just as important for me to work through as to why I may be bucking up against something in my personal life.
Mm-hmm.
Susie is reading my next book right now, proofreading it, and it was started. I was actually started before we left, and then in the year of sort of wildness, it got set aside, and I've picked it back up again since we got home in May. And she was reading, and she said, "Oh, I see the point where you got back in therapy." And I was like, "What?"
No
And
way.
she's like, "I can pinpoint the chapter in which you got back in therapy." And she was like, I was like, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "It's the first mention where they explicitly talk about the patterns that have been driving them to hurt each other." And I was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I talked to Leah about that." And she was like, she can see the tangible results in my writing."
That is awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. She highlighted a specific line, and she was like, "I heard Leah's voice."
Oh my
Leah is my
goodness.
therapist. So,
Yeah. That is wonderful. Wow. 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 I can't wait to tell Kathleen. She'll love that.
yeah, it's good. And so Susie and I go to therapy together every other week, and then I go on my own every other week. So, I also think that, anytime you're talking with couples, right? I don't know. I can't speak to anybody else's couples experience, but a lot of the things have come down to communication, to how
Mm-hmm.
you're communicating, to what you're communicating, to understanding that what you think you said might not be what someone else heard.
Yeah.
I think that when you're writing a romance, this is paramount, right?
Yes.
The
Yeah.
ways that, especially because you're communicating the two ways that some or the ways that two other people communicate. So you've got like meta communication issues there. And
Yep.
I think one of the things that I've noticed in my book since I've been in therapy is that I'm writing fewer and fewer books where the conflict hinges on bad communication.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think that a
No.
lot of humans are incredibly bad at communicating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't always think that a miscommunication conflict is wrong. I think so many of us have miscommunication conflicts in our life.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm also writing fewer and fewer books that hinge on a big fight scene. I think more and more lately, the conflicts hinge on two really good people who their values or their circumstances make them seem diametrically opposed.
Hmm. I like
And
that.
so believing that two people can be good and kind and caring and still have conflict between them that at times seems insurmountable.
You know what I said earlier about depth to your character, and that I think speaks to that, is that it's not about this communication conflict, which I think we all have, we all experience, within our intimate relationship, our work relationships. I mean, we all do, but um, what you're talking about is something um, beyond that, right? It's really that letting people know you, depth.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
great.
actually in the sort of dark scene in Seeking Approval, my editor um wrote in the comments section that she was like, Rachel Spangler, I will never ever forgive you for this. This is so utterly heartbreaking because I don't have anyone to
Oh,
be mad at here. There's no one that you can pin blame on. And then she was like, I had to go lay down and be mad at you for 5 minutes, and then I'm back to editing now. But I think that that's much more human. This idea that there's not necessarily a bad guy. There's just two, broken people doing the best that they can.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
I think that and I've said this publicly, but maybe you're the right person to say this to because it seems like you've got the platform in the background. I would love to see like a podcast or article series where you interview creatives together with their therapists.
Oh, that would be great. That would be fun. Well, do you listen to Esther Perel?
I don't.
Oh, yeah, she has a podcast. She's a therapist. She's brilliant, and um, she talks to couples or individuals on her podcast, and some of them I think are famous people. Um, but yeah, great podcast. You should check it out.
Yeah, I send me that link because I'm trying to get more into podcasts. Sorry, I thought I had muted my text, but we
That's all right.
things are poking through there. Sorry for that.
Yeah, no worries, no problem, no problem at all. All right. Well, Ray, that's about all the time we have for today, actually. Um, so I'm going to ask you, do you have any parting words for our listeners today?
Oh, no, you're a great interviewer. I think you've covered a lot here. I think I would just say that if you are going to be in Provincetown, come say hello. And otherwise, you can find me on pretty much all the social medias. I'm not on X very much anymore because I'm mad at Elon.
Same.
But beyond that, I'm a public follow on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Blue Sky Social. Like, I'm a super extroverted author. So come find me and hang out.
Awesome. All right. So, folks, check out Ray's latest book called Seeking Approval, written under their pen name, Rachel Spangler. And it's available on Bella Books and Amazon. And you can find Ray in Provincetown in 2 weeks. They'll be there with the family. So
Yeah, the whole crew. You'll probably see us around Commercial Street.
awesome. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I'm Anita Kelly, and thanks for joining Liz Talk About Books, baby. And until next time, may your journey be lighthearted, peace be plenty, and be safe, folks.